The shuttle lurched as it pierced the upper atmosphere of Lethyra, and I clutched the safety bar like it was a sacred relic. The pilot assured me the turbulence was standard, which meant absolutely nothing coming from a man whose job description included calmly navigating plasma storms. Below us, the capital spread in a lattice of floating platforms linked by light bridges, shimmering like spider silk stretched over an ocean of violet clouds. I tried to appreciate the view. Instead, I wondered whether I was dressed appropriately for meeting an alien queen. I suspected I might be the first human in history to disgrace interplanetary diplomacy because my collar wouldn't stay flat. When the shuttle docked, a reception delegation awaited me. They looked nearly human, save for their long, elegant ears that rose slightly backward, flexing, tilting, and flattening in silent commentary. My first greeting was to bow too quickly and nearly collide with a ceremonial lantern that drifted by like a judgmental firefly. The guard stiffened. The princess, standing near the front, covered her mouth as her shoulders trembled. Laughter, definitely laughter. At least I wasn't being vaporized. The princess stepped forward. Her ears curved with a playful arc that looked suspiciously like curiosity wearing mischief as a crown. "Human diplomat," she said with a voice like warm metal humming. "You survived the descent. Impressive. Many visitors vomit before even reaching the clouds." I considered it, I admitted, but I thought it might weaken Earth's negotiating position. Her ears perked high, delighted. "Honesty, rare in these halls, you'll confuse everyone." Strong start, I told myself. Confuse the aliens, that's diplomacy at work. The queen awaited inside the grand hall, where gravity itself was politely ignored. The floor floated in sections, each drifting gently like pieces of land contemplating an escape. The air shimmered with bioluminescent strands that drifted like lazy shooting stars. And in the center, the queen stood with the kind of calm that suggested she had commanded armies long before breakfast. Her ears were long, regal, and steady, yet when she looked at me, they twitched just slightly, as though bracing for whatever idiocy I was about to unleash. "Welcome, child of Earth," she said. "We have heard interesting things about your arrival." I glanced at the princess, who was staring at the ceiling, whistling innocently. "I assure you," I said to the queen, "only half of what you heard is true, possibly less." A soft laugh rippled through the hall. The queen's ears eased, the tension in the room settling, or maybe that was just wishful thinking on my part. I followed the princess along a hovering walkway, trying not to look down at the deep violet mist drifting far beneath us. "If I fall," I whispered, "I want you to know I regret nothing except skipping breakfast." "You won't fall," she said, lightly tapping the nearest panel. It emitted a reassuring hum. "Unless the stabilizers glitch. But that only happens during solar flares, or when someone steps incorrectly." "That's worse." She smiled. "Your fear is adorable." "Thank you. It's one of my most consistent traits." We passed walls covered in shifting holographic murals, star whales gliding across nebulae, ancient Lethyran queens battling sky, serpents the size of spacecraft, celebrations of previous alliances forged in halls just like this one. The princess stopped before a mural depicting her mother crowned in radiant armor. She once ended a war by throwing a general off a platform. He lived. The political message, however, did not. "I'll try to stay on her good side," I murmured. "Which side is that?" "Hard to say," she replied cheerfully. "Sometimes even she doesn't know." A group of nobles approached us, all finely dressed and radiating the kind of superiority reserved for people who definitely don't trip over their own feet. Their ears shifted subtly as they studied me, as though analyzing the structural integrity of my existence. One of them asked if humans truly ate plants grown in dirt. When I confirmed this horrifying fact, 3 pairs of ears fell dramatically backward, and one noble muttered something that sounded like a prayer for my digestive system. The princess stifled her laughter again. "They are unused to your species, rustic tendencies." "I promise we're very advanced," I protested. "We have holograms, starships, and everything." "Yes, but dirt." She said it like a tragic flaw in my genetic code. The feast began shortly after. Floating dishes drifted toward guests as if choosing their preferred consumers. One bowl containing a glowing teal liquid approached me hesitantly, as though unsure whether I deserved it. When I reached for it, the bowl skittered away, circling mockingly before settling just out of reach. "It can sense uncertainty," the princess explained, wiping a tear of laughter. "You must project confidence." "It's soup," I whispered. Why must I assert dominance over soup? She guided my hand, and together we coaxed the bowl closer. The moment I relaxed, it hovered obediently, offering itself with an almost apologetic bob. Maybe I was imagining it, but the princess seemed pleased, ears curled softly, eyes bright, expression warm. The hall glittered around her, alive with floating lights and drifting platforms, yet she seemed to glow brightest. As the feast continued, I caught glimpses of nobles whispering, their ears angling toward me like antennae tuned to scandal. I felt the queen's gaze from across the hall, not hostile, but thoughtful, as though studying a puzzle piece she hadn't expected in the box. I had no idea that my presence alone was stirring old traditions and quiet tensions beneath the polished surface of Lethiran ceremony. All I knew was that the princess kept drifting closer, making small jokes under her breath, nudging me with her elbow when I looked too serious, and laughing, soft, melodic laughter that made the glowing strands in the air shimmer just a little brighter. And somewhere between the awkward soup duel, the tilting ears, and the weight of 1,000 watching eyes, I realized that the real danger here wasn't political failure, falling off a floating platform, or accidental interplanetary insult. It was how quickly I was starting to look for the princess in every corner of the hall, and how easily she kept finding me first. The morning after the feast began with a vibrating chime that pulsed through the guest chamber walls like a polite earthquake. I jolted upright, nearly somersaulting out of bed. A disembodied voice announced that my schedule for the day included court observation, cultural acclamation, and mild danger. I asked the ceiling what mild danger meant. The ceiling responded with a cheerful, "Outcome varies." I was halfway through wrestling with my diplomatic jacket, still convinced it had extra armholes, when the princess appeared outside my door. Her ears tipped forward expectantly, catching every nuance of my confusion. "You look prepared," she said. "For what exactly?" "To survive," she replied brightly. "Hopefully." She led me through a series of elevated walkways that hummed beneath our steps. The platforms drifted like lazy tectonic plates, rearranging themselves as we walked. One shifted a little too suddenly, and I windmilled my arms in what I hoped resembled grace. The princess caught my sleeve before I toppled into the shimmering abyss below. "I thought these things were stable," I muttered. "They are," she said, "except when they are." Very reassuring. Her laughter echoed between the crystalline towers rising around us. Each tower was alive with pulsing veins of energy, quantum conduits carrying messages that zipped faster than sound. Couriers on hovering discs zipped past us, yelling greetings or warnings. I couldn't tell them apart since both phrases sounded identical in Lethiran. We entered a great chamber shaped like a star, where nobles and envoys gathered in clusters that resembled political constellations. Their long ears angled in shifting formations, each tilt a secret message I was decades away from decoding. At the center, the queen presided from a floating dais, her presence radiating command. When she looked in my direction, her ears stiffened slightly. Evaluating, measuring, or possibly bracing, the princess leaned close. "They're trying to guess your intentions." "I don't know my intentions," I whispered. "How are they supposed to?" "That's what makes it entertaining." A noble approached us, a tall man with ears so long they nearly brushed his own shoulders. He bowed stiffly. "Human representative," he said. "Is it true your species forms emotional bonds through vocalized laughter?" "Yes, I mean sometimes." He clicked his tongue in shock. "Extraordinary, primitive, charming." Then he turned to the princess, lowered his voice, and asked, "Does he laugh often?" "Only when he forgets he's in danger," she answered. I felt personally attacked. The queen called for a demonstration of intercultural protocol, which I assumed was a polite phrase for spectacle. A circular platform rose from the floor, pulling me along with it. The princess hopped up beside me as though this were normal. The nobles leaned forward. The queen folded her hands. "Human," she said. "Today you will witness one of our traditions. Should you speak truth in a moment of significance, the court must acknowledge it. And if your truth concerns a royal family member—" The princess's ears dropped a fraction. Not fear, anticipation. "Then the old question must be asked." I froze. "What old question?" "You will learn," the queen said. Very comforting. A holographic garden bloomed around us, conjured by ancient projectors embedded beneath the platform. Vines of spiral-shaped light curled around my ankles, flowers made of stardust unfurled, and a pair of iridescent winged serpents circled overhead like bored guardians. The princess plucked one of the glowing blossoms and tucked it behind her ear, its light mixing with the natural shimmer in her skin. "This is our court's way of learning who someone really is," she explained. "The garden responds to emotional resonance." I stared at the luminous vines. "It can read my feelings." "Very easily." The platform shook suddenly as the holographic serpents dove too low. I stumbled straight into the princess, who steadied me with a hand on my chest. Her laughter vibrated gently against me. "Relax," she said. "The garden won't hurt you unless you lie." "That's not relaxing." "You'll be fine." She paused. "Probably." As the nobles watched, I tried to act normal, which went about as well as expected. The garden's colors shifted wildly. Deep blue for confusion, bright red for embarrassment, green for the moment I wondered if I was accidentally flirting again. The nobles whispered excitedly, their ears dancing like wind-blown grass. Something buzzed behind us. A drone orb drifted close, scanning me with a beam that tickled like a hummingbird made of static. "Do not be alarmed," it said. "This is merely a harmless diagnostic." "Are you sure?" I asked. "No." The princess swatted it away. As we walked deeper into the projected garden, she leaned slightly toward me, her voice dropping. "The queen is watching very closely. She wants to know what kind of person you are, and what you mean to me." My heart executed a small, messy somersault. "Do I mean something to you?" Her ears curved in a soft, unmistakable arc. The vines around us flared pink. She winced. "The garden needs to mind its own business." The nobles erupted with murmurs, their ears rising with interest. I tried to change the subject. "So, what happens if someone says something significant in this garden?" "The garden amplifies it, and then tradition demands a question. Still the question nobody wants to explain." "You'll hear it soon," she said with a teasing glint. "Unless you manage to avoid saying anything meaningful." Given my talent for unintentional sincerity, this felt unlikely. As the ritual drew to a close, the queen descended from her dais. Her eyes were sharp. Her ears were steady, unreadable. She seemed to weigh me down to my atoms. "The garden reveals much," she said. "Enough to suggest that a truth is coming, a truth that will require an answer long unspoken in this court." I swallowed. "How soon?" "When the moment arrives," she said, "and it is approaching." The princess stood closer to me than ever, her hand brushing mine. "Try not to panic," she whispered. That seems optimistic." The queen turned away, the nobles whispering in excitement behind her, and the glowing vines tightened around our feet like an omen. The moment was coming, whether I was ready or not. The throne hall looked different the second time I entered it, not because anything had changed, but because I had. The drifting platforms no longer felt like death traps. The floating lanterns no longer seemed like judgmental fireflies. Even the nobles' restless ears felt less like threats and more like confused wind chimes trying their best. Maybe I was getting used to Lethyra. Or maybe I was simply too preoccupied with the fact that the queen had summoned the entire court for a matter of truth. Which, judging by everyone's excitement, was definitely about me. The princess walked beside me with a confidence I absolutely did not feel. Her ears tilted proudly, her gaze steady. Mine, on the other hand, were definitely not as expressive, unless terror had a facial form I wasn't aware of. "You'll be fine," she whispered. "Just breathe." That advice works only when the lungs aren't frozen with existential dread. "You humans are so dramatic," she teased. "It's adorable." The queen stood atop her floating dais, which slowly rotated as if to ensure that everyone got a fair view of her looming authority. Her eyes locked onto mine with a weight that felt ancient. "Human," she said, Recent events have stirred our traditions. The palace garden revealed sincerity between you and my daughter. The nobles have questioned your intentions. My people watch for what you will say next." I swallowed. No pressure then. A ripple of laughter moved through the hall. Even the queen's ears twitched upward for a brief, amused second. She raised a hand, and the hall shifted. A holographic canopy unfolded overhead, projecting images of old Letharan bonds, alliances sealed by truth spoken at pivotal moments. "As tradition commands," she said, "I must now ask the question unspoken for generations." She turned fully toward me. "Do you desire my daughter?" The hall went silent, not just quiet, silent. Even the quantum conduits running through the walls dimmed, as if the circuitry itself was eavesdropping. The princess stood perfectly still. Her ears lowered in vulnerability, something I had never seen from her. Waiting. And for the first time since arriving on this planet, I didn't feel like a confused tourist in someone else's myth. I felt clear. "Yes," I said, "I do." Gasps fluttered through the court like startled birds. The queen's expression didn't change, but her ears dipped, barely, subtly, like a tremor running through a mountain. But the truth wasn't finished with me yet. "I desire her because she makes this impossible world feel like home," I continued. "Because she laughs when I'm terrified and steadies me when I stumble. Because she sees humanity in me even when I'm convinced I'm only making a diplomatic mess." The princess's ears rose in a soft, hopeful arc. "And if desire means care, respect, and wanting to be at her side even when gravity is misbehaving under my feet," I took a breath. "Then yes, completely." Silence held for a heartbeat longer. Then the holographic canopy blazed into swirling gold. Nobles shouted, not in outrage but in shock, their ears flicking with uncontrollable excitement. The queen closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them again, something gentle had settled there. "Your truth," she said, "is accepted." Two attendants activated an ancient protocol panel. A beam of light shot upward, forming a spiral that wrapped around the princess and me like a symbolic tether. She stepped closer, her smile trembling with emotion she rarely let anyone see. "You have absolutely ruined my composure," she whispered. "I specialize in unintended consequences. And now the entire court knows you're sentimental." "That's your fault," I countered. Her laughter shook the spiral of light around us, making it shimmer like a shared heartbeat. The queen approached, stepping off her dais for the first time. "Human," she said, "your sincerity has ended debates that have lingered in these halls for decades. Our council will honor this bond. Earth will receive our open alliance." The nobles murmured approval. A few looked disappointed only because they'd lost bets. One sulked dramatically, his ears drooping in the universal sign for political hopes crushed. I bowed deeply, hoping not to fall off the platform during my big moment. "Thank you, Majesty. You have changed more here than you understand," she said. "But tell me, how has Lethaira changed you?" I thought of the floating platforms I no longer feared, the soup bowls that no longer ran from me, the princess who had become the axis of this world. "I think I've stopped running from things I don't understand," I said, "and I've stopped assuming I don't belong." The queen studied me, and her ears folded softly, approval unmistakably. "Then you have already grown into the kind of person who can stand beside my daughter." The princess slipped her hand into mine. Her fingers were warm.